it. Let whatever happens, let it happen. Don't try to get to point A to point B, from A to B, or from B to C. Just open up to what is, and see. Just let a natural process that you're not controlling have its way. Combined with satsang, which is where I'll give talks, and I'll be in dialogue, and I'll really encourage people to question and to really take a chance of really questioning deeply. And so we really engage each other in a very deep and profound process of spiritual inquiry, which is a very engaged, energetic, almost a risk-taking process. Combine these two together, which is one is sort of very dynamic and the other one is very sort of opening and relaxing. I have found through teaching that when I combine these two together, that there's a very rich sort of spiritual soil.
One prepares the ground
for the other.
For the other.
Right.
They work synergistically.
In other words, when someone can really sit and just really be, they can really follow a line of inquiry. They have a certain ability to not get lost along a line of questioning, or to hold to a very narrow sort of process, which is what spiritual inquiry really is. So it helps in that regard. And when we talk about satsang or spiritual inquiry, the public part of it that we're doing, that the meditation also serves as a sort of a proving ground. You might suddenly really think that you're the best spiritual thing that ever was, put on God's green earth. And you may really think that you're free and you're really liberated and everything. But if you can't sit still for 40 minutes without going totally bananas, it starts to dawn on you that there might be more truth to see. If when you sit down you're still experiencing these states of inner conflict, it tells you that that it doesn't discount what someone has seen, but it's a way of showing them you might not have seen the whole game. Because if you had this sitting around doing nothing thing, gets to be a pretty easy and enjoyable thing to do. So I really enjoy the combination. The
combination of the two.
Yeah.
A lot of the literature on enlightenment would lead people to believe that it takes many, many years or many, many lifetimes to attain such a lofty experience, or non-experience, as the case may be. Have you noticed that people are waking up more easily nowadays, let's say maybe in the last 20 years? I know you haven't been teaching that long, but you've been in the game for a while. Do you think that there's some kind of acceleration, or a world consciousness that's somehow accelerating the awakening process in people, or is that wishful thinking on people's part? Well,
if we go to sort of a world process, I'm kind of like, we'll see. Because really even though people think that a lot of people are coming to see me and other teachers, still this is happening in a relatively rarefied group of people. It's not a worldwide breakout. It's breaking out in little places, in little bits at a lot of places, but I don't know yet whether it's some sort of big world awakening that's happening.
Well, there is this interesting rising of teachers in the West.
This is definitely happening. And there is within certain segments of the population where spiritual awakening, real awakening, seems to be happening much, much more often. That seems to be really obvious. Yeah.
Sometimes it sounds as though you subscribe to a philosophy of amorality. For example, you once said that you have felt compassion for Hitler. Or that maybe you would choose to act based on what they want to do, rather than based on a code of ethics or of dictates of the mind. Do you believe that there are people or actions that are intrinsically evil or intrinsically good?
Nope.
You want to say any more? You want to elaborate on that, or?
Well,
we could leave it at that if you'd like.
an action is simply an action until somebody's mind decides to give it a qualitative distinction between one action and another action. So I'm not saying that on a relative level, when we get into the relative world, if you were to ask me, Adya, would you rather everybody love each other or hit each other on the head with hammers until their heads split open? I would say, Bob, I think I'd really rather everybody love each other.
Well, right? how about this angle?
So if I said, but if I put as soon as we put the judgment on it, and we put the judgment that this is better than that, we're really sort of missing a much deeper truth. And that the deeper truth is that these sort of what we think of as ethical codes and standards and all that, the truth of our being does not need them. In fact, what it sees is if we hold on to them at a certain point, they get in the way. If we're talking about the land of dreamland spirituality and dreamland human beings who are asleep at the wheel and don't know who they are, which is basically the world we find ourselves in, then to have ethical standards and morals and all these kind of things taught to children and to adults is probably a really good idea, because otherwise the whole system would get quite out of control. On that level, it's functional and it works. But if you were to ask me on an absolute level, I would have to say it's completely arbitrary.
Yeah.
The way we standardize things. And it ultimately hides us from a discovery that's much more beautiful than our morality. That when we start to wake up out of our individual sense of self, that there's a natural and spontaneous way of being, which we realize our natural and spontaneous being does not act from fear, it acts from love. It doesn't act from love because it should, and it doesn't act from love because it's a better thing or a higher thing or a more noble thing.
It just does.
It just does. And that's the good news. You see what I mean? So that's what I mean from the ultimate place. It does tend to act in a way that's moving from love rather than fear, because one is in an undivided state.
Spontaneous right action is really what we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
This isn't like anarchy or chaos. It's only anarchy or chaos if an ego gets a hold of absolute truths and then uses those truths as an excuse for egoic behavior. Then it becomes very dangerous.
Yeah. Is it I can understand the concept that the mind is incapable, as good a calculator as it is, it's incapable of calculating all of the ramifications of any action.
Right.
You step on, Star Trek is a great example where they have the prime directive that you can't interfere in another planet's evolution or history because it could have far-reaching effects on the entire known universe or something.
Yes.
So you step on an ant, and who knows what the effects might be.
Right.
You could spend your whole life contemplating the possible ramifications of one action, and waste your entire life.
Right.
So I understand that concept, but the concept of spontaneous right action is obviously, if it is true, is good news, because it would mean that somehow through the entire somatic system, through the body or through intuition or some other kind of informing in the awake person, that action is spontaneously generated that's in accordance with the laws of nature and that serves the highest good.
Exactly.
And I would presume, though you can correct me, I'm curious what you think the highest good would be. You mentioned love.
Right.
But would you say also that it would, anything that would serve in the awakening of the universe or of sentient beings or something like that is the prime?
I wouldn't put it that way, personally. No. I would say that the way that the truth functions is through the function of truth. In other words, there's no coercion, there's no dishonesty, there's no lack of integrity at all, and there's no preference. So there's no sense in the natural state that everybody needs to wake up. It's just not there. If someone wants to wake up, then there'll be a response to that.
But I guess my question is, do you